A noir encounter in London. The Rolling Stones. It was a damp, bleeding night in London, the kind where the fog swallowed street lamps and every shadow whispered secrets. I sat in a dive called the Black Cat, nursing a bourbon that tasted as bitter as lost dreams. That's when she walked in, a dame with eyes like midnight and a voice that dripped danger. She slid into the booth across from me and laid a manila envelope on the scarred tabletop. "Name's Veronica," she said, her British accent rough-edged and husky. "I need you to dig up something unusual. Ever heard of the Rolling Stones?" I raised an eyebrow. "Rolling Stones, doll? You mean the band that's got the whole town howlin'?" She gave a small, sad smile. "Not exactly. I'm talking about the formation, the secret genesis of the band. There's more to it than meets the ear. I think there's a story buried beneath all that swagger and guitar riffs, and I need you to find it." Curiosity was a drug stronger than bourbon, and I was already in deep. I pocketed the envelope and stepped out into the foggy London night. The city was a mean dame herself, slick with rain and trouble. My gut told me this case was going to be as dirty as a back-alley brawl. The envelope held a single-typed note. "When the Stones rolled, more than music was born. Meet me at the Gutter, 2 a.m. I knew the Gutter, a rundown club where whispers and deals went hand in hand. At 2 a.m., I strolled into the joint. Cigarette smoke and cheap cologne clung to the air. In a dim corner, a scruffy figure beckoned me over. His eyes darted around like a rat in a maze. "You're the gumshoe they sent?" he rasped. "Depends on who sent you, mate." He glanced around and leaned in. "Name's Mick. I can tell you what really went down. But you gotta promise, don't go blabbing to the coppers or the wrong folks." I nodded. "You got my word." Mick's story spilled out in a rush. Back in '62, he said, a ragtag crew of young punks and street musicians decided to form a band. But this wasn't just about music. It was a cover, a front for something bigger. They were bankrolled by a shadowy figure known only as the Collector, a man who dealt in secrets and smuggled art, who saw in them a way to launder money and move contraband under the guise of rock and roll. Mick's voice grew husky as he recalled the early days. They weren't all cut from the same cloth. There was Keith, a wild card with a silver tongue, and Bill, a quiet cat with a knack for numbers. Charlie was the steady drummer who kept the beat when everything else went haywire. And then there was the front man, the one they called Mick J., a real charmer with a devilish smile and eyes that promised trouble. They were a mix of ambition and desperation. I could almost see the scene, the smoky basements, the clandestine rehearsals behind closed doors, and the constant fear of being caught by the feds or worse. Mick's words painted a picture of a group united by the desire to escape the grit of poverty and the chains of their pasts, even if it meant dancing with the devil. Before I could press him for more, a sharp voice cut through the haze. "You talking too loud, Mick?" A tall brute in a threadbare suit stepped into the light. His face was a roadmap of scars and regrets. "I suggest you hush up before you get us all in a world of hurt." The threat was as clear as a punch to the gut. Mick's eyes widened, and he muttered, "I'm sorry, mate. I didn't mean to." "Save it," the brute snarled, shoving Mick roughly aside. Then he turned his gaze on me. "And you, detective, best forget you ever met me." I smiled thinly. "I'm afraid I can't do that, pal." With a flash of metal, a switchblade caught the meager light. The brute lunged, and in the melee, I ducked, feeling the cold kiss of steel graze my coat. The scuffle was over as fast as a heartbeat. I managed a swift uppercut that sent the thug sprawling. He cursed like a sailor, and before he could rise, I pinned him to the sticky floor. "Talk!" I growled, my voice low and dangerous. "Who's the Collector?" The man spat. "You don't know? That's none of your business." I smirked. "Business or not, I'm in it now. And you're gonna tell me." After a few more gritted words and a promise of a bruised future if he didn't, the brute hissed, Collector's a ghost, but he works through Mick J. The band's just a cover. The music's real, but the money, that's all smoke and mirrors. With that, he wriggled free into the gloom, leaving me with a head swirling from the fight and a mind buzzing with questions. I stepped back into the rainy night, the city's neon reflections dancing on slick cobblestones. The case was thickening like London fog. I headed to an abandoned warehouse in the outskirts, a rumored meeting spot for the band. Inside, under a single swinging bulb, I spied a group of men huddled around a table, cluttered with envelopes, bank ledgers, and a couple of battered guitars. One man, lean and restless, wore an air of authority. It was Mick J., the supposed frontman. He was deep in conversation with another, a wiry fellow with a reckless grin who introduced himself as Keith. Their words were low, but I caught enough to know they were discussing routes for smuggling a fresh load of counterfeit currency. I edged closer, hiding behind a stack of old crates. Every now and then, a snatch of conversation floated to my ears. "The collector wants the cash clean by next week," Keith muttered, his fingers drumming on a ledger. "This gig, this band, it's just a cover, a diversion." Mick J's voice was smooth, persuasive. "Let the music roll. They'll be so taken by our sound, they won't see the cash flow until it's too late." The meeting ended abruptly as the sound of sirens tore through the night, a sign someone had tipped off the coppers. In the ensuing chaos, I grabbed a stack of documents that would later tie the band to a network of underground money laundering. The band members scattered like cockroaches, leaving me with the evidence and a lot of unanswered questions. Back in my office, a cramped room above a closed-down record store, I spread the documents across a scarred desk. Each page was a piece of the puzzle, a testament to how the Rolling Stones were more than a group of talented misfits. They were pawns and players in a high-stakes game of shadows and cash. Their music, raw and electrifying, was a cover for the grim reality of their formation, a union forged in desperation, ambition, and a willingness to tango with danger. I poured myself a stiff drink and lit a cigarette, the ember illuminating the truth written in ink and blood. The formation of the Rolling Stones wasn't just about chasing a dream, it was about survival. In a city where everyone had a price, these kids had banded together to carve out a piece of hope, even if it was laced with sin. They were rebels, outlaws, in a world that had no room for genuine art without a side of corruption. As I reviewed the evidence, one thing became clear. Their music was their salvation, but their ties to the collector could drag them down into an abyss of crime. The duality of their existence was as palpable as the staccato beat of a snare drum, a rhythm that could either lead to redemption or ruin. My phone buzzed, a message from Veronica. "Meet me at the old studio. I've got something to show you." The old studio was a relic from a bygone era, a place where dreams were recorded on dusty vinyl. I knew that if anyone could provide the missing link between the band's formation and their criminal entanglements, it was her. At the studio, Veronica waited with a look of grim determination. "You found the documents, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "I did, and I'm starting to see the picture. The Stones aren't just about rock and roll, they're a front. But there's more. They're trying to break free from the collector's grip. Their music, it's a cry for freedom." Veronica's eyes softened. "I knew him, Mick J., I mean. He wasn't born a criminal. Life pushed him into that gutter. But his heart was always in the music." Her words stirred something inside me, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of this twisted city, there was a spark of something pure. I realized then that I wasn't just chasing a story. I was witnessing the birth of a legend, a band whose origins were as gritty and honest as the streets of London itself. I left the studio that night with a heavy heart and a head full of contradictions. The Rolling Stones were destined to roll, to shake the foundations of a world steeped in deceit and greed. Their formation was a testament to the idea that sometimes beauty is born out of chaos, and music is the echo of a battle fought in the shadows. As I lit one last cigarette and watched the rain wash the neon glow from the pavement, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. In a city where every man had a secret and every note had a price, a band called the Rolling Stones had been forged, a wild, untamed force that would one day change the world. And in that moment, as the storm raged on and London whispered its secrets, I knew I'd been a part of something bigger than myself, a story that would roll on long after the last chord was struck.